What's going on, you gamers? Today we're back with some more Outriders Worldslayer. What I'll be covering today is going over what they're planning to do with the game post-launch. So if that interests you, then stay tuned. Let's come up next. What's going on, gamers? Today we're going to be going over what they've announced for their kind of updates and what they plan for Worldslayer going forward. Now I am a little bit behind on this, and if you've seen it elsewhere, I may well be covering the same stuff but chucking out my thoughts. So if you already know exactly what they've gone over, you may well want to click off now, as I probably won't be telling you anything you don't already know. If however you do want to know what they're doing and you'd like to hear my thoughts on it, then we'll be jumping into that now. As always, if this does help you, a like would be appreciated, and if you'd like to become a member of the channel for more gaming content, then why not hit that subscribe and bell icon. But for now, let's see what they have in store for Outriders Worldslayer. So first off, they go on to say that they think it's been quite a successful launch. I've got to admit, I actually agree with them on this. They did have a lot of issues on the first day with logging in and being kicked off the servers, and just the early access altogether was a bit of an annoyance. But compared to the base game's original launch, I think this was actually much better. Even when I'm playing now with players, the stability seems like it's in a better place as well. Now what they go on to say is that they're going to be focusing their efforts on a larger patch to implement any requiring balances, and to hopefully fix up a few of the bugs that still remain within the game. The patch is intended to introduce some requested quality of life upgrades, such as a much needed one, thank goodness they're putting this in, and that's item locking. I have already got rid of 2 items that I really wanted because they were purples, and I really wish I had taken my time and looked things over. So item locking is something that we've needed for quite some time. Now that there's more loot, it's more essential than ever. Also, they said there's going to be an improved quick mark function. I'm guessing probably to dismantle your items and such. They also say that they are looking into increasing stash limits. However, they go on to say they're still looking into this, so I'm guessing that's not going to be in the next patch. Which is a definite shame, because if you're playing with a couple of classes now, that loot space is absolutely chock to the brim if you're anything like me. Now from what I can gather, it looks like they will be doing a small patch next week to address some of the issues, but the larger patch will be coming at the very end of July. Now going over their philosophy of design, they state that they're always aware that there's a natural player behaviour to gravitate towards the most efficient way to complete content within a given game, even where those ways may be less fun. Probably stating the obvious, I think they're saying that everyone's grinding the boss at the end, they're just jumping straight back to the lobby and replaying him until all their tries are gone. The reason for that is because it just works out best for the loot, and the loot is an absolute nightmare to get those rolls anyway. So I can very much understand why people are doing this, because I'm doing it myself. However, they're saying that this isn't the best long term because it's just not engaging, and it will destroy a little bit of the fun of the game. So what they're going to try and do is make some changes to the trials of Tarya Gratar altogether. So be aware, from the looks of it, this is going to take place by a patch and they hit us on Tuesday, July the 12th. They go on to state a large number of players have been abusing an exploit which allows them to bypass all other content and infinitely farm the final arbiter in the trial of Tarya Gratar. A code-based solution to this exploit would take a very long time to develop, as the only viable way of closing it properly would be to rewrite the entire way to save games. The current exploit is only in place because we purposefully designed the retry system within the trial to be player friendly. We did not want players who need to take a break from playing or whose internet connection momentarily fails to be punished with lost retries or be sent back to the start of the trial. This definitely makes sense to me, as that would be an absolute nightmare, and like I said, with how much grinding is actually involved in this game, I think if they do completely nerf it and not award something else, it will put a lot of players off. So they go on to say that instead they're trying to realign your options to give you more choice rather than less. So they're adding an extra guaranteed Apocalypse Legendary RNG drop in the following trove areas: the Cliffside Path, Daughter's Sanctuary and the Arboretum. This guaranteed drop will correspond to the targeted loot option for the respective trove. They then go on to say that they are reducing the final Arbiter's Apocalypse Legendary drop rate, but the choice of the legendary reward that appears after defeating him will remain unaffected. So compared to before, where the amount of Apocalypse Legendaries obtained from a full run through the trial was a minimum of 6, in the new system a complete run through with all of the rooms and the trial will net a player a guaranteed minimum of 9 Apocalypse Legendaries. plus obviously a chance for more on top of that depending on RNG again. Honestly, I don't know how I feel about that yet. I think it's a good idea in theory. I think it's really going to put people off. Honestly, I do. Everyone's got used to being able to do that now, and even with that, it's still very hard to get the roles you want. So now they're saying it's going to be harder, or you're just going to have to go to all areas. But in order to do the other areas, a lot of times, especially with those troves, it takes 4 to 6 minutes just to do one of them. And then you're not making your way to the guaranteed loot at the end. I don't think many people are going to go out of their way in order to do the whole of the kind of targeted areas, to be fair. So I'm not sure how this one's going to pan out. I may well be wrong. Let me know in the comments whether you think this is a good or a bad idea. I think with the amount of RNG involved in this game, they should probably just leave it alone with that final boss, because it still takes an absolute age in order to get anything that you want that's anywhere near what you're after. Also, another thing they're looking at is balancing the builds. We knew it was going to happen eventually. They're looking into it. It's a nightmare for everyone when this kind of stuff happens, but hopefully it won't be too bad. There are a few builds at the moment that definitely outperform the rest by quite a long margin. One of the ones they say can instantly one-shot bosses regardless of the difficulty level, making any of the content just absolutely subpar and probably not very fun for co-op. Also, one build allows players to become virtually indestructible while still outputting a large amount of damage. Players running this build can pretty much face tank any boss and not even drop their shield. They go on to talk about tank builds, so they're obviously referencing this to the Devastator, but again, I have a buddy who has made one of the best builds for the Techno, and he can just stand in front of it with a minigun and never ever die. He'll take a hit, it doesn't matter, he's just going to completely go to town, shred a boss, and then walk off into the sunset. So yeah, like I said, probably a few builds that do actually need a little adjustment at the moment in order to keep things a little bit more aligned. Hopefully it is an adjustment though, and not a big old nerf, as that's just going to annoy people, especially if they've worked really hard to get that loot. A different build has excessively reduced skill cooldowns so that they are non-existent. This, I think, pretty much was always going to happen. I'm guessing they're probably talking about the Pyromancer because of history. I've not done it myself, but I could definitely see that being a thing that's possible. It looks like that's breaking their balancing as well, so they're trying to adjust that. They then go on to say that they're going to be monitoring these certain playstyles and builds, because the plan is to ensure that if there's any balancing implemented, players are given more options rather than less. Probably meaning that they don't want people to just be funneled into that one build they have to use, because it's going to be much more powerful than anything else they can put together. They then go on to talk about the Apocalypse tiers grinding, and that they're discussing the progress rate, which is good because even for me, I love these type of games. It's too grindy, far too grindy, especially if you enjoy playing with other classes. I don't know what you're supposed to do at the moment in order to get them all to endgame, because you would have to play that Trial of Gratar in just 24/7. It's a bit ridiculous. You burn yourself out and you completely put yourself off the game if they don't change something eventually. But what they're saying is that the way Outriders was designed, and from what they've observed from many players over the years, is that the game is the most fun when build crafting. This is very much true, is why I enjoy it. The third slot makes this absolutely amazing. But then they go on to say that rather than maxing out is the main goal of your Apocalypse tiers and Ascension levels, it's intended to be kind of a throughout journey of continuating your build and exploring your different options with those mods and such. I definitely understand where they're going with this, but I think at the same time they do need to balance it, as it takes just too long to get to that tier 40. It's all well and good for someone who's just going to be playing one player. That's not a problem, they will get there eventually, but unless they're playing this game constantly, and it's probably their only game they're playing, they're going to have to grind a lot of XP, and I think it's going to put a lot of people off from playing multiple classes. So they pretty much finished that up with, for now we can say, monitoring how players engage with Apocalypse tiers. Depending on their findings, we may make some adjustments or soften the grind in the future, but we feel currently it's a little bit too early to look at the systems, as they've intentionally been designed to last much longer than a week. I think it's going to take a lot longer than a week to hit 40, even for someone who plays a lot of video games and is grinding this hardcore. So I'm wondering if they're judging this a little bit on the content creators and the streamers and such who had this game, as far as I'm aware, a little bit earlier. Fingers crossed further down the line they'll look at this, because even with myself, like I said, I think it's a little bit too grindy at the moment. By the time you do hit 40 and you're hitting the biggest numbers you can, what are you actually aiming for, because you've ran the Trial of Gratar 100,000 times in order to get there. You're probably bored now, and you definitely don't want to do it for another class. Right, so that's pretty much where they're heading for the future. I like the fact that they're looking into things. I like the things they're making. I like the fact that they're trying to adjust things for the better rather than just straight up smashing nerfs at us. But at the same time, I don't know how it's going to go with adjusting that final boss, because the loot is just so difficult to get hold of. And going to those side troves and such seems to prolong the journey of obviously getting to the end boss and then being able to get your guaranteed drop anyway, so I don't know if you probably bypass that in the first place. But I am definitely glad they're looking at loot space, because that's ridiculously bad at the moment. The only thing they haven't mentioned is of course the loadouts. We are going to be able to log our items, that's a definite plus, but loadouts, please, loadouts. And like I said, hopefully that nerf to the last boss isn't going to put too many people off, because with all of the variations in the game at the moment, I think it's very hard to get a build together, even for one class, let alone for multiple classes, aiming for multiple sets of gear. But as always, guys and girls, let me know what you think. For all things gaming, for all things Xbox, take care. I'll see you on the next day.